The story's about bees. So let's tell that story. Once upon a time ago, in the Smoky Mountains, there lived a feller named Wiley. Now he was Wiley Oakley, and he was called the Roamin Man of the Smoky Mountains. Now he got married at age 20. His bride was 15 years old. Her name was Rebecca. And they moved to their honeymoon house, their cabin, and it was way, way into the woods. It was at the foot of Mount LeConte, which is that big stretch of mountains that you can see, especially good from Pigeon Forge, and also on the road going toward Gatlinburg. If you look off to your left, the big range is Mount LeConte. So they lived way back in the wilderness, and he and his wife went back there to start their life together. His daddy had given him some honey to take with them. So Wiley writes in his book that on his honeymoon he had honey and more honey. But this story is about bees. Now, if you liked honey and you wanted honey, what would you do these days? You'd go to the store, right? You go to a grocery store somewhere and buy some. Or if you're going to Newport, on the right is Carver's Orchard. They have good honey there, local honey. So you would buy it. But back then, they did not have the stores to have honey in it. So here's how Wiley got honey. He took some honey and he put it in the palm of his hand. And then he went to where bees were gathering nectar. You know, where there's some flowers or something like that. And so he stood near where the flowers were and the bees were, and eventually a bee would land in his hand. And then very carefully, he would close his hand around the bee in his hand. Of course, the bee wanted to get out, right? Buzz, 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 trying to get out. But he was very still, very quietly, and eventually the bee would calm down and find that honey and start licking up that honey. And then after a little while, Wiley would open up his hand, and that bee would buzz on back to the nest. Now, bees fly pretty fast, so he would not be able to follow that bee. So here's the second part of his little trick. He got a little tin can with some honey in it, and he put it where the bees had been gathering and gathering the nectar. And so eventually that bee would come back expecting more honey. Would find that honey in the can there. Bees have this thing, what's that called, GPS that we have nowadays? They have a GPS system. They know to come back to where the honey is. And he told some of his buddies, hey, buzz, 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 there's some honey. Let's go get it. So pretty soon, there was a whole stream of bees coming back to get the honey from the jar and then heading back to the nest. And because there were so many bees, then Wiley could follow the trail into the woods where there was a nest. Well, this one time there was a nest about 15 feet high up in the fork of a tree. See, that's a fork in the tree there. It's got two big branches like that. And the bee's nest was in a knot in the tree. Well, the tree was too big around to cut, because normally that's not what he would do. He would cut the tree down and then rob the honey from the bees. But it was too big around, so he decided to climb up in the tree to get the honey. So he climbed up to the fork, and he robbed the honey from the bees. And then as he was coming down, one of the bees stung him. And then some more bees started stinging Wiley. And it hurt, and he dropped his honey, and a lot of it spilled out on the ground. He did save some of it. But boy, he got really stung all over his face and hands and anything that wasn't covered. So we went back home to his wife, Rebecca, and she said, Wiley, what is wrong with your face? And he told her the story of how he got stung. And she didn't say this, but perhaps she would say to him, Wiley, that ain't none of your business to be robbing that honey that way. So that's a little story about Wiley Oakley, Roamin Man of the Mountains. And one more thing to close out the story to all you boys and girls, don't try this